Welcome to This Week. My name is Peter Pinar, and I am today's host. It is great to be with you. We are happy that you could spend some time with us here live and also after the fact. This Week is a bi-weekly show on Saturdays at 2 p.m. UCT, 3 p.m. in West, 4 p.m. in Central, and 5 p.m. in East Africa. We chat about current events ranging from public health to politics from all across the continent. This means everything, serious to the comical. We welcome you to engage us in the comments or at leadersofafrica.org/live. Join our Discord community. And of course, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to Leaders of Africa. Caribou and welcome. It's good to be with everyone today on this Saturday. It is good to be with you. Let's start with you, Violet. How are you doing? How was your last week?
I'm excited, Peter. Let me tell you, finally, for once. No, honestly. So I was listening to Trevor Noah, and apparently everyone is puzzled about why there's so little deaths in Africa compared to the rest of the world when we're talking about COVID-19. I know this is a very dark topic, but for once, something good is coming out of Africa, and everyone is wondering what we are doing right. So yes, we are not the dark continent. I'm excited.
Wonderful. That's good.
Wow.
We're starting off on a positive note. Gloria, how about you? How's your last week been?
It's been great. I mean, I'm just like, who can compete with that excitement that Violet just shared with all of us? My week was good. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And Eva, I know that you've been practicing the Jerusalem dance. Is that right?
It's not going well. It's terrible. No, I'm trying, but I will not deceive you. It's not going well.
Well, maybe in a couple of weeks we can check back in with that to share the progress on the dancing front. Ghana, so what's on your mind this week? There's been a lot of things going on. There's a lot on my mind, but I'm curious, what's on your mind this week?
I mean, it's been two major one on my mind, not two good stories. One of them is the death of my hero, Jerry Rawlings, a former military president in Ghana and a democratic president in the same country. He died last week, and it's been a kind of, he died specifically on November 12th in Accra, and it's been something that has troubled my mind a lot, for many reasons, including the fact that it's so difficult to have a replacement for a controversial figure such as Jerry Rawlings. And also I've been dealing with a lot of issues at the University of Lagos, where the current Vice Chancellor is accused of, who's been accused of financial misappropriation, was unfortunately reinstated back to his job by the President of Nigeria. But I'm not going to be speaking to that today. It's a discussion for another day. It's all about Ghana today, because many times when we think about one of those leaders that have massive influence on the continent, we want to think of Jerry Rawlings. I mean, he wasn't an absolutely perfect figure, far from being an absolutely perfect figure. But he provided leadership on the continent when the continent needed one. This is a guy who was born on June 22nd, 1947 in Accra, and he got married to a beautiful lady who was in school. Yeah, they both met in the high school. One of the interesting things I love about Jerry Rawlings is education. He actually attended a military school, and in 1969, he was commissioned a pilot officer, winning a coveted award called the Speed Boat Trophy. And this is an award that is dedicated to the best cadet in flying the Sub-7 ground attack supersonic jet aircraft. I've read a lot about his skills in acrobatics. And, in 1978 specifically, if I'm not mistaken, in April 1978, he earned the rank of a flight lieutenant. One of the reasons I really love the history of Jerry Rawlings is that when I was growing up, I was prepared to be a military man. My father was a military man, and he made me to love the military. And one of those officers I would always look up to growing up, as a kid, reading about their biography and some of the things that I've been reading about, that have been written about them is Jerry Rawlings. And the other thing I love about Jerry Rawlings was his transition from military to democracy.
And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So, J.J. Rawlings has this reputation, as you said, as somebody who's, both seen as sort of a strong man, but also a charismatic leader that moved Ghana, right, towards democracy, towards development. And I've been noticing it's been playing out in many corners. So I'm curious, Eva, from your perspective, having grown up during part of your life during the era of J.J. Rawlings, where do you fall? Where do you fall down on that question? Is he a sinner or saint? Because there are a lot of articles out there. All the articles this week I was seeing about him. One was titled "The Complicated Political Legacy of Jerry Rawlings: Sinner or Saint." Rawlings was a pivotal to Ghana's political and economic fortune. So, Eva, where do you fall down on this debate?
So Rawlings, in fact, is a complicated leader. So in Ghana, either you love him passionately or you hate him passionately. But
Really?
Yeah, but I grew up listening to the love side of Rawlings. I grew up listening to positive stories about Rawlings. I also grew up in an area where majority of the people support his party. So you just hear a lot of positive things about him. It was later that when I was in high school that some of the teachers started talking about what he did, the coup, and talking about some of the people he killed and talking about their own experiences as kids and what their family went through and things like that. So there are those people who don't like him because of the killings. During the coup, some of the things he did, the cleansing of the country, as he called it, cleansing the country from corrupt leaders. So some people have families that were really affected by that. So people like that do not necessarily like him. But for me, that I don't have any family member that went through that. I grew up hearing about only positive things about him. And also, Rawlings was a man of the people. When Rawlings is going to town and people move around his car, he will stop, give people high five, talk to people and things like that. And I also grew up looking at videos of Rawlings cleaning gutters, farming, helping people, the ordinary person. So these are the stories that have stayed with me and things like that. So I would say that he fall on the positive side of my view.
How about you, Ghana? You are like he's your hero. So I'm curious there, but then you're changing a little bit there.
Yeah, well, Peter, interestingly, as a compliment to what Ifa said, one of the stories that made waves in Nigeria and that also endeared me to Jerry Rawlings was how he took on those we consider as corrupt elements in Ghanaian politics. That was our perception in Nigeria then. We would always pray that we have our own Jerry Rawlings who will wake up one day and take out all the corrupt elements in Nigerian politics and politics. There was that reckoning that we needed somebody like Jerry Rawlings, invite everybody to a meeting and just take them out. Because we felt that was necessary for the country to vote. And honestly, this is one of the reasons a lot of Nigerians of my generation growing up actually love Rawlings, because we were dealing with issue of systemic corruptions that were very similar to what Jerry Rawlings came to address in Ghana. It was later in life that I had some issues with his approach, but I significantly feel that possibly contributed to one of the reasons why later on sanity prevailed in Ghana. But it might have gone beyond the bounds, of decency. He might have done certain things. But I believe that this is a man who actually loves Ghana, manifests his potential. And another thing I love about Jerry Rawlings is his Pan-Africanism. I want to know how many of us is aware of what they call the Free Africa movement. It was one of the exponents of Free Africa movement. And that was the first reason, the main reason why you actually joined this underground movement of military officers who wanted to unify Africa through a series of coup d'etat. So he actually was involved in this coup that took place, if I'm not mistaken, on 15th of May 1979. And they overthrew, that was like 5 weeks or 6 weeks or thereabouts to a civilian election that was meant to take place in Ghana. And he did this not because he was actually interested in taking over the leadership of the country, but because of the bigger movement in Africa, his Pan-Africanist commitment to making Africa one of the best continents in the world. This is one of the things I actually love about one of the things I love about Jerry Rawlings. It's so difficult to actually see leaders that espouse such passion and love for the continent, wanting to do this thing that cut across the entire Africa as a form of movement, free Africa movement, by truly incredible leadership. You might have done it the wrong way. You might have done it the way I don't like, but I love that passion, that commitment, that willpower, that dedication to writing the narratives about Africa through installing credible and transformative leadership in his own way.
I think one of these... Yeah, go ahead, Violet.
Ghana, would you think of Magufuli as the Rawlings of Tanzania? Because it sounds like you're describing Magufuli, at least from the very charismatic way he's been trying to do things, although very unconventionally. I mean, come on, see the way he handled the coronavirus. And I'm not saying, but look, after a few weeks, the World Bank said Tanzania was now a middle-income country. And I mean, he's been very unconventional in his methods, but in a certain way, he's really turned the country. Would you liken him to, or would you say he's the Jerry Rawlings of Tanzania, or are we comparing apples to oranges?
Let me speak to that.
I agree with you. Okay, go on, Eva, please.
I don't think so. I will not compare Magufuli to Rawlings. Rawlings liked discipline. He was a disciplined guy. He wanted things to go orderly. And he believed in science. He wasn't someone who will come and say that coronavirus is not going to affect anyone. No, he would take precaution for that. He believed in science. He listened to experts in his own capacity. He did what he thought was best for the people, right? I know Magufuli is trying to do what is best for the people by actually purging opposition leaders in the country. When the country's transitioned to democratic kind of governance, and it was in 2001 when they have the election, people thought like Rawlings was going to come back to power, but he didn't. And this is something we all respect him for that. He didn't push his way to sit on the throne, like to be a president for life. He didn't push his way. It's just that he had opinion for everything in the country. For that
he did.
He has opinion about everything. So that one I would mix it.
I'm curious, how did that influence the country beyond his presidency? As you said, he kept being involved and he had opinions. And how did he influence politics post his presidency?
When he left, it was before that came in. And I think one of the things Rawlings did was try to help countries to write off the debt of African countries, right? That their loan deficit to be forgiven. That was one of the things he did. And it was also involved in like regional politics, like being an envoy in Somalia, going
for
around
the African Union. Yeah.
The African Union and things like that. And domestically, he was always talking about if there is anything that is not right in the country, especially corruption and things like that, you will hear him coming to the radio talking about it and how they should address it. And I know that he was really close to Professor Mills. And Mills, the late Professor Mills, also was in power. He had his own way of doing things. I know that probably Rawlings provided some counsel to him and things like that. But indirectly, I think behind the scene, he was doing stuff, but directly, when he left power, he left.
He thought the party, he thought the NDC party was also a little bit of his baby, I think, right? So even when he stepped down from power, you know, you wanted that, like that former President glory, that sense that he was, you know, still having an influence over the party, even though he'd left. And so when later generations of leaders in the party start coming up, he got a little bit frustrated with some of them, right? He campaigned on behalf of them because he wanted the party to come back in, you know, 2008 when they've been out of power for 2 terms, right? He wants them to come back. But then when they come back, he's like, you know, you kind of need me, or you needed me to get elected. So he wanted at least that homage to be paid. But something else kind of struck me about this Magufuli, Rawlings comparison, Violet, you raised. So you got us on this now, which is, you know, maybe our interpretation of some of these leaders in general is going to be different when we've had a little bit of time that goes by, right? So if we are living right now in this moment, and JJ Rawlings is the president of Ghana in the 1980s, right? And we're watching that, you know, Supreme Court justices were assassinated, which was a big deal. In fact, you know, those who are like the children of those who were assassinated still have not sort of forgiven the president, the former president, for that. We'd be singing perhaps a different tune, right? Devaluating the currency, the economic policies. We may be singing a very different tune than we may be, say, in a few years, of course. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's not a good thing. But I think that's something else we have to keep in mind, right? You know, when we look back at past events, we reinterpret them. Perhaps we cherry pick things a little bit more, or we see things in a new light, perhaps. So perhaps it's too early to make that comparison, or maybe it's an unfair one, but it's an interesting one.
And then his wife is running for presidency as well. And I know, Eva, in the recent past, members of parliament who have died and their wives have picked up the mantle, people seem to have given them the sympathy vote, and they have been elected members of parliament. And I'm now wondering, do you think that the late president's wife being a presidential candidate and her husband having died recently might endear her more to the voters, whereby, they'll give her the vote in honor of her husband, or do you not see that happening?
Okay, so the wife issue is complicated. So when Mills came into power, as Peter was saying, they wanted to exert some influence in the party, and they were not getting it. So they kind of, she, the wife, moved aside to form her own political party, where she's tried to run for presidency. But I think the first time she tried, that was in 2016 or something like that. She was disqualified.
Yes, her husband didn't support her.
Yeah, she was disqualified. The husband is kind of support her, but the husband is also the founder of NDC, so he's also here. But I don't think Ghanaians are going to give her the sympathy vote. No, I think that personally, people have had enough of like their rulership. When you put everything together, it's like Rawlings and the wife has been in power for like 19 years. Adding the time that he was a military leader, and also the time that he was a democratic leader. So for me personally, I don't think I would like to see Nana Akufo-Addo becoming the president. Not like I have anything against her, or I have like anything against women running, but I just feel like she's done it already. I mean, she was the first lady for so long, and she's done it already. We've seen her influence. We saw how she rallied women together. Like, there is this event that happens almost every December 31st. The December 31st, like, Makola something movement. Women come together to celebrate. I saw that. So I just feel like she's done something. So it's time for her to pass the torch on to some younger folks or someone else. But I don't think that she's going to get a sympathy vote. I don't think it's going to happen unless she was in the NDC party or the MPP party, because right now NDC and NPP are the dominant parties in Ghana, and people are going to vote for them. And even the NDC, with the death of Mahama, I also don't think they're going to get a sympathy vote. On my side, I feel like NPP is going to win, because in Ghana, most of the time they give a chance to whoever is in power to go for a second term. So
absolutely. And we'll see. And we'll see what happens in the upcoming election, whether this has an influence. Perhaps we'll be talking about that, or perhaps we'll be talking about the future of the leadership as well. So, Gloria, what's on your mind this week?
Oh, wow. Since we're talking about politics already, let's just maybe stay there. So, guys, do you know how we always talk about Western countries getting involved in African politics, but we never do that in their countries? So it turned out this time we were invited in the American presidential election. But
Finally.
listen to the story. Only spiritual beings, though. If you are an angel, you were invited, summoned to come and influence Americans' election. When it became clear last week that the now president-elect Joe Biden was taking the lead, we had conservatives, we had evangelicals who have been a core base of President Trump rising up, coming together, organizing prayer rallies. So at one of the prayer rallies, Trump's spiritual advisor, her name is Paula White. She's a prosperity preacher. She was heard summoning angels from Africa to come and help President Trump win the election. It was, you should have seen that, I tell you. And it was not just the prayer itself, the memes, social media. I don't even know what to tell you.
Did they respond to her? Did the angels respond to her?
Oh, no, denied visas. You know Trump's policy on immigration. Oh, yes. That's my favorite meme. That's my favorite meme. Actually, Peter, thank you for putting it up. You know, when I saw the angels, I collapsed laughing. I mean, for many people out there, I'm sure they know the famous coffin dancers from Ghana. And for some reason, there's just something about this picture that just gives me, laughter for some reason.
I mean, the interesting thing about this story, Gloria. This story actually attracted a lot of attention in Nigeria. And as you all may be aware of, a good number of the Nigerian population actually supported the return of President DT back to office. Yeah. And they've done everything possible, spiritually supporting him, praying for him, fasting for him to re-emerge as the president of the United States. So when she was praying, she was even speaking to a reasonable audience in Nigeria that they have been accepted over there. When somebody invokes that angels are coming from Africa, people perceive it as something very positive. And this goes back to the conversation about the believing God and the role of religion in politics. Because when the voter elected, to send this man packing from office, there was this belief that the spiritual realm can reverse the trend of change. But unfortunately, this never happened in this situation. And that makes me to be worried. Was it that the angels were not happy with the request? Or the angels were not happy with the man the request was being made on his behalf? I mean, I kept asking a lot of questions about why did the angels refuse to answer the request?
To show up. I have the same questions. I'm wondering what happened to the angels, because I heard some saying that the visas were not approved. They were detained at the border or things like that. So I have so many questions about why our angels didn't turn up. But I do agree with Ghana that Africa was supporting President Donald Trump to a certain extent. I have my sister's based in South Africa and told me that even in South Africa, some churches and some pastors there have been praying for his re-election. So it's not entirely surprising.
Well, and the other thing, Ghana, well, for Africans, I mean, yes, they prayed for the angels along with Paula White to come here for those that prayed. So according to social media, like you've seen some of the memes, the angels were either detained, others are saying the angels are like, nah, I mean, you called us that whole, so we aren't coming and things like that. But for most of the conservative pocket side of America, they're still, insistent on, it's coming, have faith. I mean, the election is not over yet. I'm sure some of you have heard about that. So apparently the angels are still working their things. So, Probably
Well,
by the
if
next
the-
This is it.
Well, if Trump's own appointments to the courts, the federal court system, or the influence over the courts aren't working, I don't know if the angels' influence is going to be exerted here. I think they have much bigger global issues that they could be paying attention to than delivering one man the presidency who has obviously lost it. That's all I'm going to say. We do need angels. I think angels from everywhere are needed, arguably.
Yeah.
But hopefully those angels will be helping us fight the pandemic, not saving a narcissist in office. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, and I especially love
Another way to
that.
look at it is this. Another way to look at it is this. I see it as a strategic communication to the
By
Republican
who?
voters' audience.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
we are a party for God. We are a party for the religious. And we are a party advancing the cause of religion, religious value in politics. She possibly knew that DT has lost this election. And it's very possible that she has an insight that we need to maintain our political base ahead of 2024 presidential elections and ahead of midterm election. And one of the ways she possibly was trying to do that was to engage the instrumentality of prayer, the instrumentality of invoking God on hinges, to tell people, this is what we stand for. Even when we've lost it, we still believe in the spiritual that this can be possible.
That's true.
And it's been something that religious people over time and across ages have always leveraged. And that was why I told somebody that might be a very powerful, spiritually cloned political message.
But yeah, that's
people are not
right. I
paying a
think
lot
the
of
key.
attention to.
I think the key part is the instrumentality of it, right? And that's what people have been mocking, is not the religious aspect of it or the pastor per se, because as you all know, if you just look up Paula White, Angels, you'll find every remix under the sun. It's put by her comments. I hear the call of victory has been put under any beat imaginable, right? But, it's the instrumentality of it. And I think, coming back to this issue of religion, I think it's starting to bring about some reckoning amongst Christians, right? About how religion is being used, right? Donald Trump has been asked, what is your favorite part of the Bible? He doesn't even know one part, right? And then obviously he's coming up against, a political leader in Joe Biden who can quote scripture, right? And so this is going to be something we're going to see over the next few years, is like, how does religion play out? And maybe attitudes on the continent will begin to change and shift, surrounding Joe Biden when more is revealed about his character, about his religiosity, which is important. But I'm curious, moving on, Violet, what's on your mind this week? I know we could go all day about this topic, but, I'm just curious, Violet, what's on your mind this week?
Well, what's on my mind is, first of all, let me just say that, okay, as much as it was the United States, I was very excited, when Kamala became the Vice President-Elect. And for me, as a female, that is huge. That is huge. And then out of the woodwork crawls this gentleman. What's his name? Kayode. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. The former aviation minister for Nigeria, Fani-Kayode, who sparked outrage on Twitter because he leveled Kamala Harris at Jezebel. And then he was trolled on as like, yes. Well, not because trolling is a good thing, but I mean, for a long time, I feel that our continent has been very misogynistic. I understand that it's a patriarchal society, but I mean, you do not come out of the woodwork and rubbish someone's achievements like that, especially for a female. I mean, the US has been long overdue in having, a female vice president. And then finally we have one. And then this gentleman just comes out and is like, oh, she's a Jezebel. Well, Kamala Harris is America's first female Black and South Asian Vice President-Elect. She's 56 years old and was elected to the U.S. Senate as a Democrat in 2016. And she was also the first Indian American and African American woman to serve as a US Senator. So, like, she has a lot of achievements to have built that young girls all over the country and the world are looking at and aspiring to become. And I remember her speech saying that, as much as she's the first woman in that office, she's not going to be the last. And then this gentleman comes and calls her a Jezebel. But one of I don't know if we do have his tweet, but he said something about Biden being a puppet on the smokescreen and a Biden presidency being a Kamala presidency, and the Kamala presidency is Satan's presidency. And he ended by saying, "May God deliver." Ghana, I have been talking about religion right now, and it's
this is a very.
How do you justify this? How do you justify this? No, like, seriously, how do you justify this?
I apologize on behalf of Nigerians. I apologize on behalf. This is a character we don't know how to do it.
Oh my goodness.
He plays the religious card, and at the same time, he plays the progressive card. And at the same time, he plays the card that is a man for women. And interestingly, of recent, he's been having a lot of matrimonial crises. He was accused of beating up his wife. So you begin to see a character that doesn't have respect for women. He claims to have respect for women, but his character within his matrimony has been revealed in many of the major national dailies in Nigeria, have clearly indicated that he's not a man that actually lives what he calls to. And by using uncharitable languages to describe women, that is not what we do in our culture in Nigeria. It's something that we frown at. We don't accept it as a way of life. It's just unfortunate that he's trying to, use his language of attack against Kamala Harris as a way to, to reintegrate himself into popular acceptance in the country. People have always accepted him for making noise, for taking on the government.
Popular acceptance if you're demonizing women, because women
because he was speaking to the religious audience. He was speaking to the religious crowd in Nigeria that embraced Donald Trump. So he felt, when he had an issue with his wife, he lost touch with that base. They started seeing him negatively. So by describing Kamala Harris so negatively, he felt he can actually work his way back into the embrace of that particular segment of the Nigerian society. I tell you, everybody across board rejected it. It failed. That's not what we do. That's not what we do. That is not how Nigerians.
Yeah, Gloria, what do you think about this issue? And
in some way, I feel like it's tied to what we were talking about earlier. Peter, you talked about how for me, it sounds like religion is being weaponized. It's people cherry picking things about religion, things that make us feel okay, things that make us feel good, and then reject and then behave in ways that are just not acceptable. It's okay to identify as a Republican and to not agree with politics that come from the Democratic side. It's okay to have differences, but this kind of language is just not welcomed. And it's not surprising because you can see this behavior from a lot of men. Zooming in on Kamala Harris specifically, first of all, and we also saw that with President Trump, how he said, "Oh, we cannot have a socialist president, and especially not a woman." So you can just feel this sense of ugly attitude
and a person of color.
And a person of color. So no, this is just not acceptable.
Absolutely, and I would like to say that.
Yeah, go ahead, Violet. I'm curious what you thought.
Well, I'm just saying that I don't know if, I do not want to blanket assumptions, but I mean, first of all, it's been overdue that America, that is the most progressive country, if we can use that term, till now hasn't had a female president. We saw how they treated Hillary Clinton, and we've seen how, especially men from the conservative side of the treated Kamala Harris. including the president. As much as for them it's been mostly veiled, and then we have this gentleman that we are talking about right now, Kayode, sort of like bringing it out and just putting it out blatantly. I'm beginning to wonder if it's just a problem on the African continent and not actually a global problem, because it appears that as long as the status quo is preserved and women are in non-threatening positions for men, then it's okay. And then now when they're in positions of power where a certain section of men feel like they're emasculated, then it becomes a problem. And so I don't know, Eva, maybe.
Yeah, so this Kamala Harris whole thing, it's just crazy. You've not even seen much about what other people are talking about. It's an issue here in America and also an issue on the continent of Africa because of like the influence that the American Evangelical Church have on the continent. You know, Paula White is like a household name in Ghana. I've never attended any of her programs when she's Ghana before, but I've heard about her. I've heard about some of the big name religious leaders in the West and here in the US, in Ghana, when I was in Ghana. So the thing is that you have to understand that what a guy wrote, the Nigerian guy wrote, is speaking to, as you guys have already said, is speaking to the religious audience here in America and in Ghana. So I don't really know, and in Africa, I don't even know about other regions. But there is this whole debate among the religious people that Biden is like a puppet, and he coming into power, he's going to do away with a lot of the things that Donald Trump has done that has promote Christians, right? So that is why they go on with the name that Kamala Harris is a Jezebel. She has a Jezebel spirit, and Ahab, you know, Jezebel's husband was Ahab, and Jezebel influenced Ahab to do bad things in Israel, right? So that is a tone that they've been using. I've listened to some prophets here in the US that they have like a prophetic message that Donald Trump was going to win. And when Kamala Harris came to the it was the same thing they were saying, that she has a Jezebel spirit. He's going to take over the presidency, and Biden is just being used as a puppet to take over America. And when she comes, she's going to turn things around. Religious people are going to suffer and things like that. And I see this thing as like really not right, because why do these religious people quote someone like that? It's okay for her to be a Democrat. It's okay for you to be a Republican. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is God that impartial, right? Are we serving an impartial God that favor one side and leave out the other side? And I came to know that it's because they prefer the person, they interpret the person they prefer in the image of like kind of a savior. And the one that they don't prefer, they don't like, they represent the image of like a Satan. So in the religious cycle, that is what is going on. So I wasn't surprised when Paula White came out to pray, because they have prophesied that Donald Trump is going to get a second term. Very big prophecy going on. And also another prophecy that came was that the thing was going to be decided, the election was going to be decided in the Supreme Court. So that is why in all these religious cycles, especially here in the US and also in Africa, people are praying that Trump needs to come. And last week, I listened to one prophet who prophesied that Trump is going to come. But when he started, instead of them acknowledging that they didn't get a prophecy right, he started by saying that the election is fraud, they stole it, it's supposed to be Trump that's supposed to win. And I'm saying, no, don't say that. If the election is fraud, where are your evidence? Because even Trump and his campaign managers that are filing a lot of lawsuits, most of the lawsuits have been rejected because they do not have concrete evidence that the election was stolen from them. So that is the tone that they've been using among this evangelical cycle. And anytime you see someone using that, they are appealing to a particular audience. And it's the same tone that Trump has used. When you go to his campaign rally, he's talking about the same thing, that Joe Biden is a puppet and Kamala Harris is going to take over. It's the same religious tone. And this is speaking to a particular group of people. And for me, I found it very disturbing. It's showing the hypocrisy among Christians, especially here and also on the continent.
Yeah, it absolutely.
So
and I think one of the interesting things. Yeah, go ahead, Gloria.
Just one line. So basically, for the evangelical world, this election is not over. The election is only going to end. We will know on January 20th. If Joe Biden gets 20th, sworn in, that's when the battle ends. But between now and January 20th, the battle is still going on.
All I gotta say is that just like sportscasters who predict the outcomes of games, pastors do not get fired for making wrong prophecies, right? The stakes are very low. No accountability in that respect. But let's move on. I want to share something that's been on my mind, which is something that's been in the news this past couple of weeks, and you'll see over this weekend. It's also been in the news. That's the situation in Ethiopia, and I'm sure for many of us, it's something that we're thinking about, particularly because it is a conflict that's ongoing. And just to share a little bit about that conflict for those of you of our viewers who don't know or haven't heard too much about it. There is a new prime minister I shouldn't say new because he's been in power for some time now, but I always think of him as new because the previous leader that was 2 times removed from him was in power for many years. But the fairly new prime minister, Ahmed of Ethiopia, came to power. And what was significant about him coming to power is that he supplanted some of the key interests that were in the country. For those of you who don't know Ethiopia well, it's a country that's very ethnically diverse. And it's not only ethnically diverse, it's also regionally diverse. So certain ethnic groups have their strongholds, very strong strongholds in certain places in the country. And during the long rule of Meles Zenawi, which now is not sort of a household name, but a number of years ago was a household name on the continent in sort of the discussions around Pan-Africanism and integration, right? Meles Zenawi, he came from the Tigray region, right? And gave sort of the Tigray people a significant power in government, right? But with the coming of this new prime minister, he is not coming from that region, and in fact has challenged the power base of the Tigray people. And so over the past, months, years and months, many of the Tigrayan people have been frustrated with the central government because they wanted their place in privilege. And so they've said, we're going to run our own show. And so they held their own elections. And now the prime minister is going in there and challenging those elections, saying that if those elections move forward, then it's going to splinter the country, right? So it seems like in Ethiopia, and this is why it's on my mind, is that it's a conflict ongoing that is becoming increasingly militarized. It's also a conflict. It's also a broader conflict in the region because it's sparking sort of refugee flows. And it raises the question, are we going to see a unified Ethiopia moving forward? What does that look like? And how can one solve this question? So these are some of the things that this case raises in my view, or is in my mind when I'm thinking about Ethiopia this past week.
Yeah, it's very sad what's happening in Ethiopia. And I don't think there's a lot being spoken, like in the media. I don't think enough is being done to shed light on what's going on in Ethiopia. These differences in ethnicity, as you rightly mentioned, there are groups of Ethiopian already right now who have been moving into Sudan because of the conflict that has been ongoing. It reminds me of what took place in Rwanda decades ago, and if nothing is done right now, like aggressively in order to sort of help that situation, I don't know where this situation is going to go. And I want to bring up social media while we talk about Ethiopia, because lots of activists have been using Facebook to share messages of violence and to bring people together and to stoke fear and anger. And again, there's a role of social media in getting involved in some of these situations. But unfortunately, as we know, Facebook and Twitter specifically are heavily involved in the West, particularly in the US. But when it comes to Africa, they've given us the platform, but with very little monitoring, very little coordination. So it's just open. People are abusing that space to create situations like what we're seeing in Ethiopia.
Well, it's funny.
A very similar situation.
Please continue, Ghana.
Yeah, a very similar situation happened in Nigeria. I've been following development in Ethiopia, and my major concern has been on the issue of the role of social media. Because when the NSAS movement catapulted into a chaotic situation where people were looting and, burning down properties, private properties and businesses, one of the major mechanisms that resulted into the spread of such, ignoble activities was the use of social media. When somebody goes to one place to start looting, he puts the information on the social media, telling other people, oh, come over, let's join looting this and that. It's something that troubles me a lot. Particularly when you look at places like Ethiopia, it's like we are sitting on a keg of explosion. That if it blows up in the air, the whole of Africa might not escape the tragic consequences of what is happening in Ethiopia. And personally, this is giving me a lot of concern. But when you look at the axis, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, we've had enough. I'm just concerned that any little big spark from Ethiopia might further destabilize issues in that area without likely to affect the greater instability we are experiencing in other places. I'm particularly afraid of the issue of insurgency coming out of this scenario that is unfolding in Ethiopia. And this is where I believe African leaders and we are, people that influence opinion on the continent, we need to do a lot. We don't have to wait for, Facebook or other people that are in charge of this social media to do the job. I think we need to find our voice and put in place our brain power to figure out what can be done to ensure that social media is not instrumented to further exacerbate the worsening situation of things in Ethiopia.
And according to the reports I've read, apparently the new prime minister, the TPLF has been one of the
TPLF being the Tigrayan what is it?
People's Liberation Front.
The Tigray People's Liberation Front. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, has been, the dominant political party in Ethiopia for decades. And it appears that since the Prime Minister Abiy's government, came in 2018, he decided to do away with it. And as much as they say that the tension has been brewing for a very long time, I'm curious to know if, I'm curious to know if bringing these factions back into being a part of the government would help with the tensions, or is it a lost cause that, it doesn't really matter at this point? They are at a point whereby it's all guns blazing.
Well, it will be interesting to see because, the prime minister is trying to create his own party because he destroyed the previous ruling party in a sense. That's the problem is that he took apart those structures and says, we're going to, create and build a new party. And part of the reason is that the old party also failed in terms of gaining broad-based legitimacy just in another region. The Oromia people were the ones agitating for political power and feeling sort of on the outside of Ethiopian politics, right? Those living in the southern part of the country, the Oromian people. And so it's always been this situation that at least one ethnic group and one region feels like they're put out. And the hope is to perhaps have a more decentralized system. So they've played around with in Ethiopia, making sure that there is some sort of level of decentralization. So you feel like you have regional control. Hence, you have sort of these regional institutions there. But obviously, you can't have just regional control without regional access to resources and some of the levers of state. So there's federalism, that decentralization federalism, and then there's real federalism, right? And I think this case of Ethiopia makes us think about how federalism could be something that is a useful strategy to solving conflicts and to making certain communities feel like they do have power. I know in Kenya, they also went through a period, and it's been a long time discussion in Kenya. Should we decentralize or centralize, right? They call it the Majimboism, so like, regionalism. And in Kenya now, they have some form of decentralization. It's sort of a weak form of it, but every region gets a certain amount of money or resources, and they have their own sort of constituency councillor. It's not so decentralized, but it's somewhat that way. But I think the case of Ethiopia, as has been raised, is maybe a prime case for a broader discussion of federalism and how it works and doesn't work. And I know in Nigeria, Ghana, you guys have a federal system of sorts, right? It may not be an extreme form of federalism, but it is a federal system as well.
But there's been a lot of concerns about that too, and that is why when you mentioned that a summer local election was conducted in the Tigray region, and that is making me to begin to think that is it possible that we begin to look at how this can actually be a kind of solutions to the problem, rather than see it as a concern. If we have like regional blocks, and they have the authority to conduct election, to elect people that represent them, with all of those people from different religions coming together to form a government at the center. Maybe that might be one of the ways to creatively address this problem. Because one of the things I'm beginning to think about is that democracy as it works in Western countries might not be the same way democracy will actually work in Africa because of the tribal nature of a lot of countries in Africa. I'm not aware that America is significantly tribal, after they eliminated the Red Indians and what have you. But I want to believe that the tribal nature of the political configuration in Africa is a big one that we need to put into consideration when assessing the outlook of democracy should be in Africa. And it's not just a thing in Africa, in Ethiopia. When you look at other places like Botswana, there seems to be something very similar. And when you look at places like Sudan, you look at places like Somalia, even in places like Tunisia, you begin to see some element of things. Of course, religion is part of the equation over there. So we may need to start looking inward. That era of Africanization of democracy, I think it needs to evolve. And that's the challenge to us, the intellectuals on the continent, to begin to recreate democracy in a way that it suits the particularities that defines the African society. I don't want to believe in this monolithic construction. Of course, there's nothing called monolithic construction of democracy per se, but I'm looking at Africanization of democracy in a way that it reflects the complexity of the African society. I mean, it's just something I've been thinking a lot about.
I agree strongly with Ghana. I feel like when we accepted democracy, when it was introduced to African countries, our leaders didn't take into consideration our diversity and all the different tribes and ethnic groups, and even in terms of language, it was something like we adjusted our constitution to suit the kind of democracy that was introduced to us. So it's really hard. And in Ghana, I remember that in Ghana, if you identify as a certain ethnic group, I know which party you support and things like that. But what has helped us over the years in Ghana, that you've seen a little bit of stability in our country, is because of the boarding system that we have, like the school. In high school, everyone goes to a boarding school. And in boarding school, you integrate with people from the West, from the South. So you tend to learn from each other about your tribe and things like that. So that has, in a way, I would say it has also helped us to kind of integrate a little bit and also try to understand people. And right now, I've seen that the NDC party, which used to be a party for like mostly Rawlings' tribe, which is Ewe, I've seen that they've expanded broadly, and NDC party is not just people from Rawlings's ethnic group that are members or party leaders. Now we have people from the Ashanti region, we have people from the north, we have people all over, and it's the same thing with the MPP party, right? So in Ghana, we are trying to figure things out as to how to integrate the parties so that it wouldn't feel like one ethnic group is leading the way all the time. And if you look at the MPP party, since I became aware of politics in Ghana, anytime MPP is in power, their vice president is from the north. And this is an agreement that I think the party have had with Northerners and things like that. So I feel like we are some of the continent, and especially in places like Ethiopia that are having conflict at this time, the African Union needs to come in. And also, surprisingly, African Union has participated in Ethiopia, and I'm not hearing what they are doing at the moment. So
we'll see.
I just like move in quickly and de-escalate the situation that is going on, so that at the end of the day, to bring together the leaders of this country to find a way to help restructure their democratic governance, their institutions, to be able to integrate all the ethnic groups so that none of them will feel left out.
Gloria, do you want to jump in there before we close out this topic, and we have one more interesting, fun topic on our perhaps fun topic in a way, kind of tragic in another. But you want to close this out, Gloria?
Yeah. What Ghana and Eva just said, I cannot agree more, because if you look at the countries that Ghana mentioned, and even all the countries with protracted conflict in the Horn of Africa, in Central Africa, they all have one underlying issue, which is ethnic conflict. And so it is high time for our leaders to start moving in that space. And that's why personally, I have no patience, zero, for any leader or influencer who uses their platform to divide, who uses their platform to continue stoking the flames of division. Every time I see that, I wish I had superpowers to sort of just tear down their Twitter account or Facebook account. I don't know, but yeah, we need to work real hard.
So I was reading the BBC, and I know, Gloria, you came across this too. This is from the Pigeon Service, BBC. Ginimbi, now popular Zimbabwean socialite and millionaire until in death for road accident. So who is this Ginimbi guy, and what is this road accident? What's this all about, Gloria?
Well, so Ginimbi, it is a tragic story because somebody just died, and he was a young man. He died at 36 in a very tragic car accident. So looking at his life, Ginimbi was a socialite. He was the light of the parties in Joburg. He lived in South Africa for most of the time, but he's from Harare, Zimbabwe. Yes. As you can see from this picture, he's a young man who lived large. He calls himself a businessman. He's a socialite. He was a millionaire, and he was driving all these luxury cars. And he died tragically on Sunday in a car crash. And because of his life and everything that he used to do, bringing people together with lots of money, his friends and family decided that they are going to bury him with a stack of dollars in his coffin.
Yeah, and
I don't know
Gloria, I'd never heard of Ginimbi until the time that he died. And as much as it's tragic, I must say that I learned two Isuzulu words, Abantu Batwala, Abantu Batwele, and I'm like, okay. So that's apparently, well, you could translate since you've lived in Joburg. But his wealth has been very controversial. And I've had stories of people saying that this is crazy, but people have been saying he's been in the Illuminati, he got his money from the underworld, and there's been all these things going around. And Gloria, I'm sure you probably know the South African socialite, Jackie Pamotse, if that's the way they say her name. Yeah, she had this whole Instagram live, and she said all these things about snakes and all those things, and apparently he's been associated with all that. And then there was this other girl, the one whose birthday they had gone to celebrate, the one he died along with, Moana.
Oh, yes.
Yes, she had a video recorded on, I think, Instagram, and she was predicting her death. I watched it, and somehow it was eerily similar to the way she died. And I was looking at Ginimbi's father's conversations, and he was saying something about how he had drafted the will, but he was supposed to have signed it the Monday after the Sunday he died, but he didn't get to sign it. And apparently for weeks he's been having premonitions of his death, and he even bought an money casket. Guys, that guy was living large. Money casket, and it was so glossy and huge, and fancy. And so his dad was saying that he has been, having premonitions about his death, and his dad actually mentioned that it was chilling because he didn't know how his son had come to, have visions of his death, and he was wondering if his son had been consulted, witch doctors and things like that. But yeah, so there's a lot of controversy going on around his death, but at the same time, as much as I got to know about him after he died, he really lived larger than life. So he was a very, very controversial man, just like Rawlings, but in a different way,
I don't know if we're going to be able to confirm any of that, but there are some things we do know about his wealth. He was in the gas industry, selling and distributing gas. His net worth ranges anywhere from, some people would say, from, a 10 million to 100 million. It's a little unclear, but he's been involved in gas deals, and he's had a lot of different tax evasion cases against him in Zimbabwe, because he is Zimbabwean. And so the government has accused him of tax fraud on a couple of occasions. There was a case that was lingering, and this comes from Pendula, sort of this encyclopedia of characters in Zimbabwe, or people from Zimbabwe. There's also the situation that he was caught potentially defrauding a ZANU-PF member of parliament as well. And then obviously there's his socialite lifestyle, spending time with many women, right? And this whole sort of larger than life personality. So I don't know if we're going to confirm any of these other spiritual type of connections or things of that nature, but we do know what he did do in his business and other dealings.
Peter, I would like to speak to the fact that this is a very big occurrence on the continent, whereby if someone has lots of money, of course he was a millionaire in dollars, typically you'll find that people will associate it with, spiritualism. And so it, again, just like there's a lot of spiritualism associated with politics. Again, there's a lot of spiritualism associated with wealth on the continent. And so it's something that we cannot escape. And it's still something that's weaved into the narrative.
That's true.
Well, the way I see it is this. It goes back to the fundamentals in African values. The African value is a self-scrutinizing society. It's based on self-scrutinizing society value orientation. And that is our own indigenous way of fostering accountability. When you make money in Africa, to the extent that I know, right from the word go, people want to know what were the sources of your income. People believe the sources of your income should be crystal clear, so that you won't be bad examples to others in the society. I want to look at some of the comments about the source of wealth as having a basis in this. And the other is there's what they call the money ritual. It's one of the ways that people spring from nowhere to become rich. I've been trying to understand, wrap my head against this concept of money ritual, where you heard that somebody did a money ritual and became a billionaire, a millionaire from nowhere. How this operates, I don't know. That might also offer another explanation of what is happening.
That's very interesting.
And it could be
just a quick one before.
Just a quick one before we close.
This story won't be complete without mentioning this. A lot of people, though, directed their anger at Rolls Royce, because that's the car he was driving, and they hit a Honda, a very small car, and that Rolls Royce went up in flames like crazy. So there's a lot of criticism going to that brand of car, saying how can that 5 million rands car just not have any real safety feature based on this accident. So, yeah.
Interesting point about automobiles to end our session today. And we are so glad that you joined us. We want to thank you for joining us either live now or after the fact. We'll see you again in 2 weeks for this week with another host. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button to subscribe to Leaders of Africa's YouTube channel and join the Discord community for conversation and future program alerts. We want you also to join us on social media. Leaders of Africa has a Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram account. Follow us there. And that's all for this week. Now off to next week. Please be well and stay safe and take care.